And welcome to another episode of Patriots 4th and 2. I am your host today, Derek Havens, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Steve Balsh-Jerry. We are both PatsFans.com bloggers. In today's episode, we are going to go through the Patriots 2023 regular season schedule. I know we're about a week late on this, but we both needed a little bit of a break after a long draft season, and it's good to take a step back, Steve, and kind of go through everything. I know everyone has their analysis, and yeah, it's a little bit, just on paper, but it's still fun to talk about. We're going to go through that. We also have, obviously, there's a big announcement about week one, which we're going to start off the show with. And then we want to talk about a couple of the undrafted free agent Patriots that they signed after the draft, because we recapped all the Patriots draft picks, Steve, but we really never touched on the undrafted guys. So this is kind of more of a cleanup show, kind of getting through some of the latest news. But I'm excited to get your take. But before we start, how you doing today? As you take a sip of water. I'm like the dentist with my timing, just perfect.
I know. When they got three fingers in your mouth, they always ask, "Does this hurt?"
How's your day going?
Yeah. I'm doing pretty well. We've been painting outside, so this is a good time of day to stop when the heat of the day comes in.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the sun is beating right through the window there. I was going to entice you with the, shot of the swimming pool. But yeah, the sun was coming through too bright right now, so had to lock it up. But yeah, this is always an interesting time of the year, because this is when 32 teams are, they're all very optimistic, after their draft and, free agency and signing undrafted free agents. So, optimism is running supreme for 32 teams. And I like that, you know.
Everyone's at square one. I mean, we always know who the contenders are, but I mean, you never really know. I mean, look at a team like the Detroit Lions. Like I could easily see them winning the division. I could also see them going 6-11 and the bottom falling out, you know? So that's just one example off the top of my head, but I agree with you. And the Patriots just got their first reps in spring too. A couple of guys, we saw the first look at Christian Gonzalez and Keon White and a couple of those guys on the field. I mean, no numbers, no jerseys, no logos, all to be earned, as Mike Reese pointed out. The always knowledgeable Mike Reese, showing, giving his 2 cents when the Patriots tweeted those pictures out. But, we're just at square one, Steve, right now.
Exactly. And I saw Robert Kraft last week on Good Morning Football, and he was saying, after the draft was over, he was talking to his son, Jonathan, and he said, "I feel really, really good about this draft class. I think the sky's the limit on this." And he said, my son looked at me and started smiling and said, "Dad, you say that every year. So what's so different?" And Kraft started laughing, and he was like, "No, but I really do feel strong about this year's class. I think the team," and, I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, "I think they did a great job of addressing a lot of needs in the draft." So,
yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see the guys on the field. I mean, I know it's just preseason. We're several months away from that, but it'll be fun to see. That's all. I know it's a little bit of paper football, but it's still fun to see, and we'll get some good training camp buzz in a little while. We're still, 2 months away from that. So we have time, and this is a weird time. I don't know. I know we have a lot of people who are Patriots fans that aren't necessarily Boston sports fans, but if you are a Boston sports fan, the Bruins, unfortunately, I don't really want to talk about it, but aren't in the picture. The Red Sox keep going, keep blowing saves left and right, but the Celtics are keeping things interesting, at least for now. Hopefully they can, keep us entertained here for the next little bit to kind of kill this quote unquote dead period. But if you're not a Boston sports fan and you just like the Patriots, you came to the right place, and we are going to go through the entire schedule, and we are going to start with week one, Steve. And there was a big announcement about week one, where the Patriots are going to be at home, at home, 125 game, September 10th, against the Philadelphia Eagles. And the biggest news out of this wasn't necessarily the opponent, Steve. It was that the GOAT, is coming home, and Tom Brady will be honored. They said first of many celebrations, and I want your take on this because I think there's a really couple of different spins you can take on this. I want your thoughts before I share mine.
Well, they're trying to make amends with Brady. I mean, I think Brady doesn't hold it against Kraft anymore. He showed up at Kraft's wedding last year. So I thought that was a big deal for them personally.
Yep.
And now they're trying to do the right thing, and as they should. They know he's retired for good now. So they're going to pull out all the stops. And when the Patriots put their mind to it, they can put together some awesome video. I mean, think of all the highlights of Brady's 20 years. And I think that's going to be some really cool stuff to see. As I talked to you offline, I don't know if it was today or yesterday.
Probably this morning.
Yeah, it might have been. I really hope that Kraft, and I wrote about this on Sunday, Kraft throws out the 5-year waiting window. I mean, does anyone in New England really feel the need that they have to vote Brady in the Patriots Team Hall of Fame? I mean, this guy set all the records. There should be no way.
I mean, he basically built Patriot Place, with all due respect to Robert Kraft. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, without the revenue and the championships that he brought with Bill and other players, of course, it's just not a one-man band, but we all know the deal. He was part of that whole infrastructure, this whole new look, last 20 years that it was able to fill Robert Kraft's pockets, which he then redistributed into, the mega center that is Patriot Place now. And so, I think there's, and to your point, and you wrote this in your Sunday notes that's available on PatsFans.com. You do the weekly column there, and it's always a good one. I mean, it's not really fair to the other people who are going to be going against him. So if you are, I don't care who it is, pick your two. Who would go up against Brady. We all know who the winner is. We don't need to wait. We don't need to belabor it. I mean, if you want to wait the 4 years and say, look, Brady's going in, but we also have 3 other people, I guess that's fine. But I also think that whoever wins of the other 3, I think is also overshadowed in that moment. So
exactly.
I almost think you have to do an independent entrance with, Tom at a different time than, say somebody else. And I think you'll have to do the same thing with Bill. And there's a lot of talk, and I guess this is kind of a rich person's problem. But there's been a lot of talk I know about with the Patriots voting committee for the Hall of Fame, where they feel like the logjam of older players from the non-dynasty era are going to be blocked by so many guys who've been here the last 20 years that they feel like they need to start bringing in a quote unquote legacy player, along with more of a modern day player. And so I think that is something to consider too. And look, I mean, there's a lot of different permeations to this, Steve, and I'm not sure there's a right answer, but I can tell you with confidence based on some people that I've talked to that I know we both know, they've said it, as a matter of fact, it's not a public statement that they're trying to figure it out. Fred Kirsch is one of them who's been very vocal from Patriots.com. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm paraphrasing for him. Anyways, before we start breaking down the schedule, people, I just want to remind everyone to please subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Please like, share, leave us a review. It keeps us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. Now, Steve, we could talk about the Brady return until we're blue in the face. I do want to share one thing before we start. I just feel like I said this to you earlier today. Maybe it's just the fan side of me, and we are a fan show. Sure, we bring some analysis, but as we've always said, the two of us and Russ Goldman, who's the other host of the show, we've always said we are a fan show first. And for me, my fan side, Steve, is just happy that it feels like mommy and daddy are able to kind of make amends here. I felt like a lot of Patriots fans got caught in that whole divorce crossfire. And I understood where Bill was coming from a tiny perspective. Not really. I understood why Brady was so spiteful. I understood him taking some time back until he was officially done. But I don't know, it just makes me feel better, quote unquote, as a fan to go ahead and that he would come back and just kind of get his flowers from the team that he so richly deserves. And, from the other side of it too, I just think it's the right thing to do. This is someone, again, who brought you 6 championships and meant so much to the organization for so long. It's going to be a multi-tier celebration, as it should be. And I'm excited to see what's next. I know how close the Krafts are with Brady. I know how much Brady cares about the Krafts. Do I think that Brady is going to be around here every year? Probably not, but I do think he'll make periodic entrances, and I'm looking forward to that. It just feels good to, I guess as a fan, as someone who enjoys sports, just to know what they accomplished together. I mean, Brady and the organization, the fact that they are able to kind of make amends, because it just felt like such a sour taste the moment he left back in March several years ago. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah,
Any other thoughts before we move on?
I think that's a great point. And I think Brady will be around because some of the players that he played with over the course of his career here are going to be honored. And I would imagine he's going to show for, if not all of them, the vast majority of them.
Yeah.
So he won't be a stranger, and that's great, because he spent 20 years here, and he's an icon, and the only 2 constants of that entire era were him and Bill.
Sure.
And
the Krafts, of course.
And the Krafts, yes. But, those 2 they're kind of, bonded, really. So I think it's great that he's coming back. I think it's awesome that the Patriots are going to honor him, week 1. And I can't wait to see it because, as I said earlier, when they want to put together a video that gets the fans all hyped, they're really good at that.
Yes, they are.
And with 20 years of highlights, there'll be no shortage of stuff to pick from.
And as we mentioned offline earlier, I can't even imagine how expensive those tickets are going to be. I mean, it's going to be outrageous.
But shout out to our friend Damien Sharkey from New Zealand. Him and his wife they're flying all the way from New Zealand to Boston. They're going to come in, and they got tickets for the game. Damien's a great dude.
Great
friend.
Cheers, mate. Hope you're doing well. We haven't talked in a while, Damien. Let's catch up. Anyway, so let's break down the regular season, Steve, and let's go through. Do you want to do game by game, or do like 3 or 4 games and then just talk about them as we go? What do you think?
Yeah, I think we can break it down by first quarter of the season, which I think the first quarter of the season,
brutal.
It's a tough one, and
yep,
I'm looking forward to it because if you want to get a good outlook on where the team is at, we always hear, wow, they're tomato cans, they're this, they're that. Well, you can't say that about this year's schedule. It's the toughest in the NFL. And that first month is absolutely daunting.
Yep. So I'm gonna go through it in order. So week 1, Patriots at home hosting the Eagles. Week 2, Patriots at home hosting the Dolphins. Week 3, Patriots on the road in the Meadowlands facing the Jets. And then week 4 in Dallas versus the Cowboys. Steve, pick your litter here. I mean, look, you got 2 division games, 2 NFC East opponents. That the Cowboys a little more familiar than the Eagles, I suppose, but they're certainly starting with a big challenge in week 1 with Jalen Hurts, and the Eagles, who have done such a beautiful job building their team with Howie Roseman, and Jalen Hurts with a brand new contract, just got his master's degree, by the way. Congratulations to him.
Isn't that awesome?
He's an impressive young man for sure. I look at it again. 2 familiar foes, 2 teams that are maybe not as familiar, but I see a really tough month to start, Steve. They're going to have to be on it early. And a team that usually has a little bit of a slower start to the year, they can't afford it to start slow this quarter of the season.
No, and with the rest of the schedule, at a minimum, they have to finish that first month 2-2. I think. I'd really like to see him finish 3-1, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Same thing as Robert Kraft. I'm always optimistic this time of year when it comes to them. I think they made a lot of really good additions to this team. And I think the biggest one is Bill O'Brien. And, with Bill O'Brien, calling the plays. I think the offense, even if you didn't change a thing with the players from last year to this year, I think with O'Brien, the offense is going to be much, much better. But, and the other side of the coin, the defense, which was very good last year, you and I were impressed with the defense. We know they needed, to make some improvements, but I think they really did. And the first 3 picks of the draft, they addressed the defense. So because they know the quarterbacks that they're going to be facing this year. So I'm really excited about this first month because, you want to see where you're at. And if you make it through this schedule and win 10, 11 football games and make the playoffs, you're on the right track.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. I would say too, Steve, that, 2 division opponents early, which isn't really a surprise. I think you have to hope for at least a split. I would say 3-1 at best, probably 1-3 at worst, but 1-3 would be a kind of a bad hole to put yourself behind. I do think that the second quarter, which we'll talk about in a second, is a tiny bit easier, but not a whole lot. And we'll get to that here in just a second. I'll also say that the one benefit let's say sneaky optimistic benefit, Steve, is that with the Patriots, with the Patriots having a new offensive coordinator, I know people know Bill O'Brien around the league, but potentially they might not know exactly what's coming on offense. I think they could surprise some teams a little bit, catch people off guard. Maybe they don't show their hand right away, and I know that they'll kind of grow and develop as they go, but I do think they could potentially catch a team, let's say like the Dolphins, for example, or the Cowboys. I'm not sure they would do it against the Eagles right away per se, but I do think like a team like the Dolphins, I won't be surprised that if after week 2, we're talking about the Patriots had a couple of different wrinkles that we were not expecting to try to catch some teams off guard after what they put on tape last year.
I think that's a great point because we don't know. The only thing we've been told is that O'Brien is revamping the offense, and I think it's because he's going to take more advantage of the players that he has. Excuse me. I think, when you look at it, the one thing, he wasn't a great head coach, but he was an excellent offensive coordinator. And, he's looking at the whole picture, his running backs, his wide receivers, his tight ends, his gimmick guys that they can plug in there. And I think he's going to revamp the offense to take advantage of the guy's strengths that he has. So I'm really optimistic about the offense. I think it's going to be much, much better.
I think that they are going to show, obviously we know Bill O'Brien likes his 2 tight ends. I also think he's going to kind of melt. And I know this is not an original thought. I'm sure a lot of people have had this. I think he's going to melt some of what Mac did at Alabama and what he has done so far with the Patriots, both his first 2 years. I would imagine he looks more at what Mac did well year 1 and what he did well at Alabama. Now, remember, at Alabama, he ran a lot of RPOs, which they didn't do a lot of last year. He was also killer at play action his last year at Alabama, 23 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And so I could see them doing a lot of those things. I could see them doing a lot of empty, a lot of Ramondre Stevenson kind of split out. Maybe you have 4 guys with, maybe like a Gesicki kind of playing a quote unquote a big power slot, big slot receiver, however you want to phrase it. I could see a couple of different wrinkles, Steve, and I'm expecting that. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they bring to the table. But let's move on to the second quarter of the season, Steve. The Patriots are at home October 8th versus the Saints. Then they go on the road to Las Vegas to see what seems to be like the New England Raiders with all the additions they've made and see a familiar foe in Josh McDaniels. Then they are at home versus the Bills. And then again, the Dolphins on the road. So they see the Dolphins twice in the first 8 weeks. A little bit of a tough or easier road than the first quarter, Steve, but still some tough opponents there. And again, 2 more division games, I would say, in this quarter here.
Yeah, I was surprised that they're finished with Miami before Halloween.
Yeah.
Because usually it's like one at the beginning, one at the very end.
No.
With Miami, it's been traditionally that way, and those are the games I always look forward to. Because you go down to Miami and you melt in the heat, and then they come up here or come up to New England, I should say, and there's snow on the ground. Everyone's wearing sleeves. So this year they're finished by October 29th, I believe it is, right?
Yeah, thankfully. I have it right here. So the last game is October 29th. So before Halloween, they're done with Miami, and they're done in October, which is awesome because it's you're not in Miami when it's super hot out. Love that for them because they have definitely struggled in years past. I don't care what kind of team they have going on. That's always been a struggle for them, definitely.
Yeah, and it's still going to be hot down there in October. So.
And you know what? I kind of like the fact. Look, I'm not overly optimistic with the Bills. Okay, I know I'm not saying they have no chance, but we know what it's been like the last few years. I think a silver lining take for me would be that you don't see them until week 7, Steve. So at least you get the first 6 weeks. You get it to kind of get a little momentum. I'm sure there's always a little bit of some rough starts. It's Mac's third coordinator in his third year. There's a lot of guys that, they took a step back last year after McDaniels with all the, kind of everything that we all know about with Patricia. And I just think that having 6 weeks to kind of get a rolling start before you see a Bills team that we know can put up points and has definitely dominated you in the past, I just think that, I don't know, it's like a silver lining take, Steve. I think that kind of is nice for them because if they were to face the Bills in like week 2 or week 3 when they're still kind of getting used to the Bill O'Brien stuff, I just think that just seems like a recipe for disaster when they're already facing an uphill battle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Buffalo started off last year just looking like they were going to run roughshod over everyone, right. But then injuries and, they had some players that had down moments at times last year, and they didn't live up to their hype at the beginning of the season through the end. And, it kind of showed in the playoffs for them, but they're still a really good football team. Now they've lost some guys, but I love some of the additions they made. It's still going to be a really tough game for them.
No, I totally agree. And I would say this too. I mean, I think as a total aside, I think they have a lot of pressure. I think the Bills are under a little bit of pressure this year. And I'm not saying that as like a spiteful Patriots fan. I think the Bills have done a very good job putting a nice team together. I think Brandon Beane's done a really nice job. I think Sean McDermott has lost his cool on the sidelines a few times, but I think on balance, I think he's done a good job. But I also think that, Bills fans, and I'm not saying this in like a mean way. I'm sure I'm going to get Bills fans all of my mentions, but I'm just saying that I think you just have seen that nothing's kind of given, that injuries happen, that it's hard to go ahead and get through. And I'm wondering if they're able to kind of learn from those mistakes this year. And if they were to fall short, Steve, I wonder if the Pagula family would consider making some changes. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, but I think that they would be dumber than dumb to try to take some of the heat off Allen and preserve him, because I think the way that they've used him these last few years, I think, is a recipe for a short career. And you have a guy that is so, dynamically talented. I just think if you keep running him the way you do, you're going to have the Cam Newton effect. And Cam Newton had a great career, but it was ended shortly, and you saw the physical decline because he took such a pounding. And I think that they are putting Allen in a similar predicament, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he was their leading rusher, and that can't happen anymore. Now they've seemingly addressed that. They brought in Damian Harris, and I think that Buffalo has to generate a running game if they're going to go to the big dance. But the crazy thing, as good as their defense was, and we've been raving about their defense for several years, it's been their defense that lets them down in the playoffs the last.
Which is why Leslie Frazier got a quote unquote leave of absence this year, which I'm not so sure was his choice. And by the way, Sean McDermott's a defensive guy too, which is another reason why I think they're facing so much pressure.
Right, because I think that they didn't let anything out publicly, but I think behind the scenes, McDermott had to be displeased with the way the defense was being run.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. All right, well, let's go to the next two games, and we'll got the next two games, and then there's a bye. So then we'll take the break at the bye, and then we'll do the back half. Okay, so let's do it that way. So the Patriots again, November 5th. They are hosting the Washington Commanders, the newly purchased Washington Commanders, at 11 o'clock at home. And then the Patriots are, quote unquote, at home. This game is in Germany, Steve. I'm pretty sure for me in Scottsdale, Arizona, it's going to be at like 6 a.m. So that'll be fun. But we'll, but it is going to be kind of a cool experience. Patriots hosting the Colts, and then they'll have their bye week. So any thoughts on these two games? Any thoughts on, let me ask you this. Let's do it in reverse. Okay. For one, I love the bye week spot. Great placement. One of the first things I always look for when I check out the schedule, where's the team's bye at? And I love it right in the middle of the year. Secondly, Steve, I would do, we're going backwards. I think the Germany thing is cool. I'm glad that the team has to go has a bye week after, but man, that can't be easy on the players. And I know this is not going to stop, for the league, but I can't imagine that that's going to be an easy transition for everything. I'm happy for the fans in Germany and overseas. I'm sure it's going to be a blast. I have a couple family members who, are military that are over there, and I know that they are already kind of circling that game, and they really want to go. And there's a lot of buzz, according to them, because I asked them about it. And I don't know. I think it's a cool event, I guess, but I do think it's tough on the players. And lastly, versus the Commanders, I don't know what to expect here. The Commanders are another team where I have grown to like Ron Rivera a lot. I think I like the way he carries himself. I like the way he commands a room, but I don't really know what they have. It's like they have, what is Sam Howell going to be? I'm not so sure. And they have some pieces on defense, but the Commanders are a team where I could see being okay, and I could see them being a total dumpster fire. I'm not sure which way it's going to go.
Exactly. And I love Claire's response to you. Oh, boo-hoo. That's one game you have to get up early.
Hey, I'm not a morning person, Claire. Okay, so yeah, and I have no problem. Claire, tell me right in what time? If the Patriots are on at 1 in New England, what time is that for you? I don't know what the conversion is from.
It's 5.
Is it 5 hours? So she watches it like 6 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's ideal. That is ideal. Have dinner. Now, if it's a later game, that's not ideal. Then you're up late. If you're not a night owl, like I'm a night owl, I can stay up no problem. 5 hours ahead. Okay, that makes sense. Being across the pond. So the 1 o'clock games are
those
what you're
night games for the people in Europe. I mean, that's starting at 1:30 in the morning there.
Yeah, that's commitment. Yeah, that is definitely commitment. Well, anyway, so thank you for answering then. 8 p.m. games at 1 a.m. Yeah.
You have to be hardcore to stay up and watch.
You do. And look, a lot of our fans from around the world, I mean, some of them are absolutely committed. It's awesome. And I know that you, Steve, you root for the 1 o'clock games. I personally like the middle games, not prime time, not
4 p.m.
Oh yeah, which is only 1:30 for me, so I can watch the game, maybe take a quick little nap, like just doze off right before dinner real quick. It's a great.
Yeah,
great
when I was working in Mexico, I had to get used to the West Coast time, so football was on at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
1 o'clock or 10 o'clock, but 9:30 the pregame starts, and then 10 o'clock the game starts, and we're used to eating breakfast at that time, so it was weird getting used to that, but it was cool because it was different. But I don't, those 1 a.m. games, I don't know.
It's brutal. Any final thoughts, Steve, on any of these before we hit the break?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Germany game. I mean, the Patriots have had several players from Germany. Sebastian Vollmer does the games over there.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
And the fact that the Germans are so hyped about the NFL.
Yep.
They're already looking forward to this game, and there's a lot of buzz over there about that, and I think that's awesome. So,
No,
in the
it's definitely
Washington
awesome.
game, I just don't like you. I mean, things can change. We've seen it happen. I just don't see where they'll keep every game competitive, but I can't see them winning many games this year, especially in their division.
I know they do have a tough division for sure. Well, hey, let's step aside here for podcast purposes. Take a break. When we get back, Steve and I are going to break down the final few games of the Patriots 2023 regular season schedule, and then we're going to talk about a couple of undrafted free agents that have caught our eye, and we'll be back right after this. And we are back here on Patriots 4th and 2, the official podcast of PatsFans.com. Again, I am your host, Derek Havens, today. Joining me, as always, is Steve Ballestieri. We are both PatsFans.com bloggers. Again, be sure to subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. We are currently in the middle of breaking down the Patriots 2023 regular season schedule. We just finished off at the bye week, Steve, which is over, I guess, November 19th. The next game would be, again, we'll start with, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm pulling a Mike Francesca and counting on air. That's great. So we got 7 games, so we'll do 4 and 3, Steve. Let's do it. So the Patriots are on the road versus the Giants coming out of the bye. Then they return home to host the Chargers. Then they're on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is a night game, primetime game. And then they go home again to host the Chiefs in another night game. Give me your thoughts on this, Steve. I think it's a pretty tough road. And the Giants under Brian Daboll last year really impressed. He got the most out of Daniel Jones. And we'll see where the Giants are, but I was impressed with what the Giants did. I don't love Brandon Staley for the Chargers, Steve, but I know they have talent, and Justin Herbert has, obviously an immense arm and certainly a great young promising quarterback. Then they go to the Steelers, and look, say what you want about the Steelers. I guess a lot of where they go will really ultimately be on Kenny Pickett, but I don't care if the Steelers are struggling or not. They're always a tough out under Mike Tomlin. And he's a good coach, and he's going to get them ready to go, especially at home,
prime time.
especially in prime time. And then the Patriots are at home versus the Chiefs. We know what Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid can do. It's always going to be a chess match, but it's going to be difficult. I think this is another really, really tough stretch for the Patriots. Steve, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I think this is really tough. I mean, as you said, they're facing the Giants, who, nobody gave them much of a shot last year, and they really came together under Daboll. They should be better this year, but you never know. But that's going to be a tough game. I think the Giants defense and the Patriots defense will probably control that football game. I see a low scoring one in that one, at least right now. I mean, on paper, of course, as we said, injuries, whatever things occur, and it might end up being a shootout. We don't know, but I think that's going to be a really good one. And then, the Steelers, the Chiefs, I mean, those are going to be really good football games. And unfortunately, they're both on prime time. So,
yep.
The Chargers, I just never know what to think about the Chargers.
Tell me about it.
They always, going back to the early Brady years, everyone always said the Chargers are loaded. They're, loaded for bear every season. And they always found a way to fall apart at the most inopportune time. So I never know what to really think about them. I think it'll be a tough game. I think every one of the games this year are going to be tough. So I think, that's, steel sharpens steel. And that's the only way to look at it. They have to take all of these one game at a time.
And I'm not even sure. Like, look, they also, not to skip ahead, sorry, but the Broncos are also in prime time. So you got three primetime games in a row. Claire. Sorry, Claire. Get your 5-hour energy, take your mid-afternoon nap, and call out of work the next day, because that's going to be brutal. But I will say this: I have absolutely no confidence they are playing all 3 of these games in prime time. There's no way. one of these games, I promise you, people will be flexed out. There's whether it's the Patriots or because of the opponent. Because I could see the Broncos going back in the tank. I could see them thriving. I could see the Steelers struggling. I could see the Patriots struggling. Maybe the Chiefs have a bigger matchup, or not. I guess they can't have a bigger matchup, but maybe there's a better matchup than just the Patriots. If the Patriots are struggling, 3 primetime games in a row. I wouldn't say I'm optimistic about the Patriots, Steve. I'm not going to do a prediction right now. We'll save that for later. But I'm not like pessimistic either. I could see them going either way, but I just don't think they're going to be worthy of 3 primetime games in this at this spot. I really just don't. I mean, I know that the Patriots still bring in views. The numbers have reflected that, but 3 in a row is a different story. So to me, I think that's a little tough, And so let's go to the back 3, Steve, to finish off the year. Again, Patriots on the road in Denver, December 24th, Christmas Eve, and then they play the following week on the road in Buffalo on New Year's Eve. Let me just say this: that effing sucks. I hate that. I hate that for the players. I hate that for the fans. I mean, the NFL is just so greedy. I can't stand it, especially the Christmas Eve night game. I just think that sucks, especially for families that have young kids and they're trying to get I mean, I guess if you put the kids to bed and you're wrapping gifts up while they're asleep, getting ready for the morning, but maybe you're getting ready to host family or something the next day. You can't just sit down and watch the game. The Christmas Eve game sucks. At least the New Year's Eve game, Steve, is at 1:00. I mean, at least you can, or 2:00 or whatever the heck it's going to be, depending on where this whole daylight savings thing goes. But right now you're talking about the early game, at least for Christmas or for New Year's Eve. But the Christmas Eve game, Steve, that pisses me right off.
Yeah, I don't like the timing of those, but that Buffalo is a tough place to play. Christmas Eve, people are going to be lubed up for that one, so that place will be rock.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that'll be me in the crowd because my cousins and I have gone to that game a couple of times over the last few years. So usually those tickets are easy to get, because people are like, I got other things I got to do, and I'm like,
I mean, people with families with young kids, it's tough,
Yep.
And that's why and the players all have families, even the guys that are at home. It's still you're away from home during all that time. It's I don't like that.
Yep.
But whatever. We're preaching to the choir because the NFL, as we all know, they're always trying to make everything prime time. So
no,
there we have it. But that's a tough, a tough 3 games as well.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention Denver, really the last game, which is
they never really play well in Denver.
No, I mean, it's hard, but they haven't played well, historically in Denver. But I would also say this: we didn't really talk about the Jets game, which the Patriots are at home, and they didn't list the time for this one, Steve. And I think this could be a fascinating spot where either I could see a couple different permutations where either the Patriots and Jets are both battling for one wild card spot, or I could see the Patriots holding a spot and they need to beat the Jets in order to secure it, or vice versa. Or maybe the Patriots let's say that the Aaron Rodgers experiment works and the Patriots are able to keep the Jets out of the playoffs, or vice versa. There's so many different things here. I love the fact they left this open because I do think that could be a fascinating spot. Depending on what happens with Miami, I think that is a big X factor. I do think that also comes back to Tua's health, which is a total aside. But depending on how you think where the Patriots, finish in the division, I think this Week 17 game could be just absolute terrific drama, depending on how the season shakes out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because I think it's going to mean something. Week 17.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it didn't. I'd be surprised if it did. At the very least, let's say I'll go glass half empty, okay? Which is different from where I normally go, Steve. But let's say the Patriots are out of the playoffs, but the Jets need to win in order to do that. You don't think the Patriots would get up to keep the Jets out of the playoffs? Oh, Bill would be licking his lips. He'd be spinning that dial so hard. I just think that would be terrific. Definitely good theater, in my opinion.
Absolutely. But, Yeah, I think that's going to mean something. So this is going to be a really interesting season because,
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I'm looking at it, the big picture. I think, whoever wins the division will probably win it with you look at the division this year, it's tough. I think, if you win 11 games, you might win the division this year.
Oh yeah. Do you
So
have the schedule pulled up? Because I'm going to ask you a question, and I probably need it
I
pulled up.
don't have it pulled up, but go right ahead.
Okay. Do you have either a hardest stretch or a hardest game? If you don't have it, I can share first if you want to think about it.
Well, I think the hardest game will be Kansas City.
I was going to say the same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And I
And
think, and why do you think that? It's just because we both agree. And by the way, people, we never ever share answers like this, so this is always off the cuff. So my reasoning is, Steve, is because you come off the bye and then you go to New York to play the Giants, host the Chargers at home, Steelers prime time, and then another prime time game versus the Chiefs. I just think that's a really tough stretch against an opponent. You're coming out of the bye. That's just a lot. It just seems like it just seems like a really tough spot, at least from right now. That's my reasoning.
absolutely. And plus the fact that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year.
Sure.
So, there you go. And Andy Reid is always, the game planning between him and Belichick is always incredible to watch because Reid will try to scheme up something against the Patriots defense. And it'll be interesting to see, of course, at that juncture of the year, if everyone's healthy, they have a lot more athletic players on defense this year.
Yeah.
So I'm curious.
And I would also say the most, I don't know if I would say, I'm battling between those games we just talked about and the first quarter of the season with the Eagles at home, the Dolphins at home, the Jets on the road, and the Cowboys on the road. I'm battling between those four and the four we just talked about as being the hardest stretches. I would say the beginning is really tough because you have some really hard opponents, including 2 division games, and against a team that a lot of people expect to be in the Super Bowl conversation in the Eagles, and a tough Cowboys team on the road. It's like, man, you really don't want to start off bad just to start the year. But if you can somehow come at that 3-1, you're going to be feeling pretty good going into that second quarter, which I think might be, a little bit more favorable personally. But
absolutely. And, as we all know, the Patriots, they've traditionally treated the first quarter of the season as extended preseason.
Sure.
But I don't think they can do that this year.
No.
Not with the opponents that they're facing. I think it's going to be a real tough stretch.
Like if you started out 0-3, sure, you lost to the Eagles at home, but the 0-3 means you're actually already not only 0-3, you're 0-2 in the division.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a real kick in the what. So I just don't think that you can do that. So I think that is something to kind of circle, as really important. At least right now, it's May 16th. So okay, it's early, and we'll revisit this before the year, but. Right now, okay, so we're just kind of going through it. Now, Steve, let's totally flip the page here because I want to wrap up here really, pretty soon. We didn't get to talk about some of our favorite undrafted free agent the Patriots signed. And I think the obvious one off the rip would be Malik Cunningham, the Louisville quarterback. I will mention this. He was the highest paid undrafted free agent in New England Patriots history. He got a $30,000 signing bonus, whether he makes the team or not, and he's got a base salary of $170,000 to sign with the team. Really, really impressive dual threat player. He completed 62.4% of his passes for 1,568 yards, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions in 10 games last year. He has a ton of speed. The Lamar Jackson comparisons are going to come out because he's because he's from Louisville. He's a black dual threat quarterback. I mean, it's obvious like where people are going to go with that, right? But, it's like, I do think that whether he is a factor or not, which I would be shocked if he was a real factor, I think that I'd be shocked if he wasn't on the practice squad at minimum, because I think his value as a scout team quarterback for athletic quarterbacks they face, I think is tremendous this year. And as I heard Mark Schofield with Taylor Kyles on their podcast the other day, Mark mentioned how he could be if he does that year one, he could be, a legitimate, I guess push, Bailey Zappi for a quarterback position for quarterback two in the second year. And I totally agree. I definitely think that's really intriguing right off the top.
Yeah, that you took the words right out of my mouth with everything that you just said.
Yeah.
I mean, because I thought at a minimum, this guy's going to be your scout team quarterback. And that's great because you face a lot of mobile quarterbacks this year, guys that can move and throw on the run. So he's going to give you that. And so there's no rush to push him into the lineup unless catastrophe happens,
right?
And you lose your top two quarterbacks. But, if everything works correctly, he's your scout team guy this year. He can ease himself into the playbook and, come year two, he's ready to compete. And I think he's exciting. And just that fact that he's going to prepare the Patriots defense for whoever they're playing that particular week, I think it's going to be a great addition. And I'm not sure exactly right now, but I would say he won't make the 53, but he's going to be on the practice squad.
Yeah, I think we're both in agreement there. And then there's some other ones. You got tight end Johnny Lumpkin from Louisiana, real big, 6'5", 264, kind of more of a blocking tight end, but, kind of more limited upside as a receiver, but they don't really have that, so that's kind of interesting. And then Jordan Healig from Appalachian State. I just think this is a classic Bill pick. They love for some reason right now. It's kind of weird. They are in love with these like 6'2", 215, 225 pound ish linebacker, defensive back, hybrid mold, Steve. And this guy projects as a potential special teamer, so you never want to rule that out. And then also you have receiver Ed Lee from Rhode Island. He was there for 6 years, which again, you're kind of seeing a lot of these guys as the COVID the whole pandemic kind of pushed guys to be a little bit older. And we're probably going to see that for another year or two before that's passed. But, another kind of blazer, 4.4 speed, 5'8", 180 pounds. He had a great three cone, which we know they value. Do you have a favorite out of any of those guys?
I think the blocking tight end, that was something that we were hoping that they would address, and I think this guy as well. I think he's going to end up on the practice squad, but you never know. If somebody gets dinged up, they can activate him off the practice squad, and he can act like a blocker in the running game and maybe catch an odd pass here and there. He's not known as a great receiver, but you still need guys that can block. And the two tight ends that they have are very good receivers, not great blockers.
Yeah, and they also only have two, and they're both on 1-year contracts. Mm-hmm. So I just think that's – now let me say this. I don't want to wish injury upon anybody, right? Of course. But injuries do happen. And this is a team where if one of those guys, meaning Gesicki or Henry, go down with injuries, Claire, plug your ears, I think that they would ultimately probably sign a veteran, Steve, and instead of Johnny Lumpkin. But I will say this, I wouldn't be shocked if he's on the practice squad and he's elevated a couple of games, like where they really want to emphasize, hey, we're going to pound the rock this week. It's going to be cold weather and, wherever. And we are going to, Billy O, I know you want to spread and shred, but this is the week where we're going to line up and we're going to go ahead and run. And, I wouldn't be shocked by that, where he's elevated 3 or 4 times this year, Steve.
No. And, he could end up being a short yardage fullback too,
Yep. It'd be a big ass fullback. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've done that in the past. And, if he's activated, why not use him? He might not be, in the routes for the passing game, but you get down on the goal line, you have Ramondre Stevenson in the back, and you lead the way with this guy. I could see that scenario as well. So
100%.
I think, he'll probably see the field this year. I think at some point, maybe not a lot, but that's okay. He's an undrafted free agent.
And whether it's sorry to cut you off, but whether it's him or maybe he comes in and he's not impressive, I can almost promise you, I would bet, anyone who wants to take a $20 bet, and I'll donate to charity if I'm wrong. Whether it's him or another tight end veteran that they sign, there will be a tight end, if not on the active roster, on the practice squad. Because there's no way they're running just two guys all year long on 1-year contracts, both that have no blocking skill set. They will, if Johnny Lumpkin comes in and they're like, wow, he's really slow and unimpressive, he drops a lot of balls, whatever, they're going to bring somebody in who's going to have that, they're going to have in that system, whether it's him or somebody else. Okay. And I know I'm covering a lot of bases. I'm just telling you, there's just no way in hell that they're only rolling Gesicki and Hunter Henry, with no guy on the practice squad. It's just not going to happen. So
nope.
Any final thoughts, Steve, as we wrap up the show?
No, I think, the schedule came out, and I for one, think it's really, really interesting because I can't wait. I mean, we've been talking since last year. We want to see what Mac Jones and this team are made of. You had to throw out last year because of the situation with the coaching staff. And this year, hey, they've upgraded at a couple of positions. They've really upgraded at offensive coordinator. So I'm really optimistic despite the schedule or how it's going to all turn out.
I'm glad you are. I'm glad one of us is. No, I'm just kidding. I'm only teasing. I'm excited. Like you mentioned to start the show. This is a lot of teams fan bases are excited, and they should be. I mean, this is the time of year where optimism should reign across all 32 teams, or at least 27 or so. I mean, if you're a football fan, yes, this is the dead time, but you are getting excited. Maybe people are slower to the draft than others. They don't really care that much, but they're kind of slowly clicking through, and everyone's starting to look at their calendars and being like, oh, hey, we're going to be in Las Vegas that weekend. Maybe we go to a game, and or whatever. And I think that's an exciting thing to do. So anyways, we're going to wrap up the show. Steve, I don't know if we will do a show next week. I think we'll kind of just go, with the flow. I would like to, but it just depends on what kind of news there is. So stay tuned, people. We're either going to do one again. This is May 16th. So we'll probably either do one on the 23rd or 24th next week, or we'll wait 1 week and give it a breather, depending on how we feel. But for Steve Balscherry, I am Derek Havens. Again, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Patriots 4th and 2. We are both PatsFans.com bloggers. I want to give a shout out to Ian Logue at PatsFans.com. And please be sure, again, to subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. It keeps us high in the podcast ranking so other Patriots fans can find us. And we will see you guys next week.